Okay, hello, welcome along. This is the Influence Podcast. This is episode 128 of the show. I'm very excited today. I am able to invite a friend and a colleague, somebody who I've been introduced to in the past couple of years, who's part of a mastermind group with me, and I've had a few conversations with previously, and I'm genuinely excited to be able to invite him onto the show today. Erik Luhrs is his name, and Erik helps business leaders become the version of themselves that they need to be to exponentially expand their business, attracting top-tier talent and build world-class teams. Erik is a Fortune 500 consultant, a master practitioner of NLP, something which I'm fascinated by, a psychic intuitive, something which I'm even more fascinated by, a peak mindset coach, a revenue generation strategist, and a whole bunch more. Erik, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Welcome to the Influence Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Greatly appreciate your time. There's many places that I've been keen to start, but I guess let's dive straight in with what you do and your the company at the moment, Be, Do, Scale. I've heard of the idea of Be, Do, Have. Tell me about Be, Do, Scale. Where does that come from? What does that mean?
Well, it comes from the construct of Be, Do, Have. So Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he coined the phrase Be, Do, Have. Now, his was a bit different in that what he was asking people was, it was all around goal setting. Who do I need to be to achieve this goal? What do I need to do to achieve this goal? And what resources do I need to have to achieve this goal? And so he was on the right track. But in reality, when you really look at it and you study a lot of different stuff like I have, quantum physics, NLP, et cetera, the question isn't really, it doesn't work out as to what do I need to be, what do I need to do, and what I need to have. It really is be, do, have, which to me is a mathematical equation, which is be times do equals have. Who you are being times what you are doing equals what you are having, the results you have, which is why I call what I do Be, Do, Scale, and really why I focus on beingness. Most coaches, consultants focus on doing, and I certainly focus on doing as well. But I discovered after working with a lot of people and, creating 300% growth in a quarter, taking people from 150,000 pipeline to 10 million in 8 weeks. I would love to have said it was the do stuff, right? I would love to say it was Erik gave them great messaging, Erik gave them great positioning, and they exploded, and everybody should be lining up and giving Erik big fat checks to explode them because I can give you great doing. But really, when I look back at them, my miracle clients, as I like to call them, they changed who they were being. And I spent a decade really focused on do stuff. I really got into the subconscious mind and, developed 3 different systems around the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is still incredibly powerful and necessary in your business. But I realized that it went beyond that. It went to the person, to their beingness. And so the bigger the person they became, the less that what they did mattered, and the more they scaled. So that's why I focus. That's why I call what I do now Be, Do, Scale.
Nice, I love it. So that very much, just to clarify, I guess in my own mind, that very much focuses on, as opposed to the specific actions that we need to do, it's more about the type of person that we need to become. Is that a fair reflection, or have I slightly misinterpreted that?
No, you're right. And it's interesting because every day I'm this is what I love kind of about what I do, is I pick up bigger and bigger or more important nuances and about what I'm doing. And it recently occurred to me, because for a long time I've been saying to people, be a bigger and bigger version of yourself. But I realized that within all of us, we already have all those versions. Woody Allen said 80% of success is showing up. And I said, well, if that's true, you could damn straight the other 20% is which version of you shows up. And within us, we have the most timid, scared, frightened little child. And within us, we have the greatest run towards the machine gun hero and the philosopher and everything in between. We have, every aspect within us. So it's really not just about, saying I'm going to be a better person or whatever. It's really about, okay, I'm about to go do this thing. Which version am I right now? Which versions of yourself do you want to stay more in which ones do you want to bring to the table more, and which ones do you want to bring to the table less? And really focusing on that part, that work on yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And I think as you say that, I can immediately, I'm thinking of my own personal, what I consider my own personality, which is there's definitely the child in there that's terrified at times. There's the running into the machine gun, as you describe it as well, kind of courageous side. For somebody that's listening right now, then, and I'm fascinated. I mean, for myself personally, but I consider myself a doer in that I like the idea of having a list of things I need to do. I feel that if I get those things done, then that's going to take me to the next level and potentially to becoming the person I want to be, or increasingly so. But for somebody that maybe listening that has the do things, how would you reframe how they approach this? Do they need to reframe the doing side? Do they continue with the doing side, but they need to shift in the being side, or is it a totally different approach in this sense?
Well, you have to look at, that's a great question. You have to look, in fact, that's probably the key question. You have to look at, where did your list of doing come from? If you put together your list of to-dos from a fear aspect of yourself, from a fear level, from a fear version, then you can go do that list, right? You can finish the list and whatever it is, but it was created from low energy. It was driven by low energy, and the results are going to be low energy.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, one of my first mentors, when I was first studying NLP, and he was training me, for business and NLP and everything. And he said, I'd rather than make 100 phone calls in a day, I'd rather you get into a peak state once and make one phone call. And you'll get better results than if you just picked up that phone, gritted your teeth, and went again and again and again and again and again. And back at that point in time, I thought he was insane, because I thought, everybody says you want to be successful in sales, you got to pick up that phone. You just got to take no, let it roll off your back, hang up, pick up, hang up, pick up, hang up, pick up. And, you see, why are so many people burning out of sales? It's because all those people are in there and they're terrified. Okay, they've gotten used to being hit with no and just keep going and and whatever. But think about the energy that comes from that person. You go like, oh, that guy's a warrior. That guy's the same guy goes home and he downs a bottle of Jack Daniels after work every day, because emotionally he's destroyed. You just can't take that kind of abuse. We look at football players and say, God, they're huge, they're big, they're so strong. These are the same guys, they're in their 50s and 60s, they're hobbling around, they can't remember who they are. Yeah, because they're, it's like they've had this image of strength, but underneath it's just bam, 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 bam. And so really, you create that. If you can go out there on the gridiron every day and smack your head against other people, but the damage you're taking, and it's the same thing. So I would say, when you're making your do list, sit back and say, okay, when I imagine myself, doing these things, how do I feel? And a lot of times it's like, and this people are like, why do I procrastinate? Because you created a list of things that don't feel good to you. Well, yeah, but I've got to get them done. well, it's like, well, it's part of my job. Well, maybe you're in the wrong freaking job. Because something's wrong. If you're not excited by what you're doing, something somewhere is out of whack in terms of alignment with your beingness.
Yeah. It's great. I love that. I was making notes as you said, where did your list of to-dos come from? Did it come from low energy ideas? I think fear was a word that you mentioned as well. Mm-hmm. And the importance of getting into that peak state where you can then go through and follow that particular action in a much better state, I guess. So I mean, I don't know if you're giving away all your secrets here, but I've got to ask, how do you work with people, or how do people move towards that peak state? What does that look like?
Well, so again, we all have within us the various levels of ours, various levels of beingness, or various versions of ourselves, however you want to look at it. So a lot of the work that I do initially, because people come to me and it's always the same question: how do I this? How do I scale my business? How do I attract top talent, keep top talent? How do I position better? How do I create this new division in my business, whatever? And I always take them back to beingness first. It's like, okay, you have to go, because the people who are scaling, if you're happy and you're scaling and you're happy, like, then you're being and doing in alignment. Everything's perfect. So when you have a question of the do, it's always, okay, we have to go back to being now. So it's about getting people in touch with who they are being, and then what version they are being, and what version they want to be. So I guess you could say I invented, I've studied a lot of folks, studied NLP, I've studied, the quantum physics stuff. I've studied Joe Dispenza, I've studied Abraham Hicks, studied Tony Robbins. So I've studied everything in psychology and the Silva mind control method, psychology and parapsychology and motivation and whatever. And what I realized was, a lot of people came back to visualization. They said, okay, we got to visualize. Yeah. What I realized was, because I would originally, I used to take people through visualization, and I would go through visualization myself, and I realized that a lot of people still weren't making the progress at times, and I was making progress at times. And I realized that what was happening was that when you see something you really want, like an outcome for yourself, you tend to, that you in your current state believe is beyond yourself. You view it as if you're watching a television, as if you're watching somebody else's life, and you don't have any emotional connection to it. You said, you can see a picture of yourself in an Aston Martin driving down the Pacific Coast Highway, pulling into your $20 million beachfront mansion, with the person of your dreams next to you in the car, and blah, 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 blah. But you don't feel like you're like you have it. And yet when you look at your current conditions, you feel it immediately. So I realized, okay, and Abraham Hicks has talked about this forever. It was getting in alignment with the feeling of the thing. So I said, okay, and I started trying to get people to see and then feel, and still it was like bang, bang, bang. There was that wall. So I said, okay, and I started playing around with just feeling, and first feeling just my heart, and then my body, and it feels like, and you don't realize, like, most people, everybody, we lead from our brain and the lower part of our brain. Like, every action that we perceive the world through our brain, but the fact is we've got multiple senses. And so relearning like a baby how to feel, going back to that state, just feeling, like, wow, I'm just feeling things. And then how do you move into an experience the feeling of, without any visuals, without any other senses, just the feeling of the outcome. And then building from that point. And that was where all of a sudden a hell of a lot of ahas started coming from, because I started playing with this on myself, and then I started doing this with clients. And I call this field work, FEELD work. because I believe you create in the quantum field and you're feeling into the field. So that's what I do is field work. Taking them into the field, getting them to actually feel in their body what it feels like to have like a state. So it's not even like, what's $10 million like? No. What is $10 million equal to? What would equal financial abundance or financial freedom? Great. So it's freedom. What would that feel like? The freedom to go anywhere and do anything. Okay, so what does that feel like? And then taking them into that feeling, a nondescript feeling, so that there's no tangibles, there's no vision or anything. And then from there, letting them create, saying, okay, now slowly let a vision rise, slowly let an outline rise, slowly let a circumstance rise. And the stuff that came out of them through that was vastly different than the wish list that they had from their conscious mind. And I say, okay, so now that you're in the, okay, so the work is this. Okay, so what kind of, what are you selling now? Who are you selling to? What does it feel like? How does it feel like you're connecting with your audience? How does it, and all of a sudden, new things, new ideas, new ways for lead gen, new ideas for the positioning, new ideas for messaging, new ideas for offers, new ideas for divisions. It was like, new idea. And as that created, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, now, okay, people are being attracted to, I'm getting a team because of, like, and that was the thing, is taking them past the wall that they have in place because of their current consciousness. That's really the stuff. And then now they come up with this raw material that we can, like these diamonds, just big chunky diamonds that we can just craft into amazing things. So that's really the fun part.
Sounds incredibly powerful. It really does. I don't know if now's the right time to mention it in terms of how you just described that, but for everybody listening, this isn't something I mentioned before, but we, Erik, we did a session together about a year ago. How I won't say much more about it now, but I'll talk about it a bit more in a moment, if I may. But could just for people listening, could you say a bit more about what that session was and what the intention from that was, and I'll keep it quite broad, just what that session was about and how that kind of worked and what it looks like for people.
Well, well, what you and I did was kind of a more raw, what I called a source session, which was kind of taking a particular issue you were having and then going, helping you, connecting with your higher self. Well, that's, I guess, the other piece I should probably put in there. I have this ability when I'm working with people to pick up on what their higher self is communicating. Your higher self is your true self, your higher self, your inner self. It's your connection to source, etc. And from cradle to grave, it is always answering your questions. It's always got the solutions to your problems. Now, do you hear it most of the time? Hell no. Why? Because you've been conditioned not to. When we were babies and until about the age of 5, it was natural for us to have this connection. And then around to the age of 5, your analytical mind, as they call it, or the analytical mind, as I call it, kicks in. And it starts thinking for you. And it's the part of your brain that starts making you listen to other people. And your parents tell you to do this, and your religious leaders tell you to do that, and the teacher tells you to do this, and your peers make you do that. And all that conditioning kicks in. Yeah. So when I was doing those sessions, and I still do them from time to time, that's really about taking a particular issue and trying to get to the heart of it by connecting with that person's higher self. Like, what is your higher self really trying to communicate with you at that time? And so those sessions, and so when I'm working with the higher self really comes to me kind of in these sort of vague images, sometimes statements, and often questions. I like to describe it as, how they say you have 4 bars on your phone when you have a strong signal. I have half a bar. Sometimes even that's a little, fluttery. If it's really good, I got a good solid half bar. But at least I'm picking up something and I'm channeling it through. But yeah, that's one of the forms of sessions that I do, which is a source session. But you can talk more about it if you want, your experience.
Well, I think that was one of the first times that we connected. As you said, I wasn't sure of the name of it and how exactly you described it, which is why I was kind of glad that you did rather than me kind of making a real mess of it. But yeah, the source session for me was, I just found it fascinating, as you say, that having never spoken to you before, you could pick up on, or what felt like you were able to describe things to me about my circumstances and situation at the time, which maybe, as you say, I wasn't aware of, because with hindsight, and I think even something that I'm increasingly aware of is what are my ideas and what do I think is the right thing. What do other people, what other ideas do I listen to other people, and what do I feel that they're trying to tell me? And then it only feels like in moments of real quietness, usually when I'm removed from technology, usually when I'm not working on the business for 2 or 3 days at a time, usually when I've been outdoors in nature or something, when I feel like I actually got a lot more space to be able to think a lot more clearly. How do you define, I do want to ask one more on this, and then I want to connect it back to the be-do scale, but how do you define what you do and connecting with source to, would that be a similar circumstance to people who are, if you like, unplugging from their normal day-to-day routines, and they take that time out where they can be a bit more self-reflective? Is it a similar type of process, or do you shortcut that journey so that people don't need to do that, or is it something totally different?
Well, when people are able to really see, the thing is, most people take like a vacation or something. And when they go on vacation, they go and they do a lot of activities and they de-stress, and that's good. Like your physiology needs that. You need to go away, every once in a while and just break your routine. and because you break your routine, you break your common thought patterns, and you will, start to float up in your levels of beingness, right? Because you move away from the fear, you move away from the day-to-day grind, you move away from the things that pull you down on a regular basis. So we're always trying, ultimately in life, or what we really want, even though we don't realize, is we want to, as much as possible, bring the highest version of ourself into physical form, as close to our pure sourceness, our pure highest self as possible, without going boof and turning back into energy. Yeah. So yes, when you take those vacations and whatever, you take time to reflect, you go for a walk, whatever. Yes, you will start to rise through your levels of beingness. My work is in alignment to that, in that when I'm working with people, because when you're by yourself and whatever, you're starting to connect more with your higher self and whatever, but there's still a lot of that conditioning there. What I do is, because I'm able to kind of pick up on the higher self and, unfettered, as it were, even if I've got half a bar, it cuts right through or it bypasses all of your conditioning.
Yeah. I'm
not trapped by your conditioning. So when I'm picking up from your higher self, I'm hearing what it's saying, and then anything that it says to you, like when it can get through, it bypasses all your conditioning too. But first it has to get it hits right at the heart of you. But first it has to get past your conditioning, and the most important conditioning you have is to ignore that it's even there. Yeah. And that's why it's like, okay, but when I do pick up on something and I say it to people, I mean, that's why I've had people burst into tears on me, and I'll just say, just whatever popped out of my mouth. Not like a burst into tears because I insulted them, but burst into tears because I'll be something will come to me and I'll be like, okay, somebody.
Does that happen? Sorry, Eric. Does that happen? Could you been? I mean, have you been in conversations before where suddenly you've kind of stopped somebody and said, "Hang on a minute, I need to share this," or has it not been that extreme?
It was in the flow. It would be like, so I was working with somebody on pricing, on being able to ask higher prices. And they were asking about strategies and yada yada, and and it was a little bit of, okay, well, why, so what's keeping you from it? And then in the middle of kind of having this back and forth, I just looked up and I said, okay, what female in your life above you, older than you, taught you to devalue yourself so much? And it just came out of nowhere. Tears just streaming down their face. And after about a minute of sobbing, I didn't know what the hell was going on, the person said, my grandmother. And then this whole story came out.
Yeah.
And when they were done, I said, well, how do you feel about raising your prices now? And they were like, I can do it now. Like, okay, good. It was like okay,
okay, cool.
Yeah, okay, good. That was the whole point.
Amazing. It's just, you just think it's, I think it's fascinating. I mean, we that session we did, the final thing I've said it, but we recorded it. I've watched it. I watch it quite often. I would say I watch it probably once a month or so, because I always find just valuable going back to. But I just find it hilarious how you just like, yeah, just what I do, it's not a big deal. I think it's great. So where do you feel at this stage then you have the biggest impact? You personally, where do you feel you have the greatest impact at this stage?
What do you mean, where do I have the greatest impact?
So in the sense of what you're doing with business right now and who you're working with, where do you feel you can have the biggest impact right now, and who do you enjoy working with the most at this stage?
Oh, okay. Well, I tend towards the creative and visionary founders, of any age, and any stage. A lot of times, this can be their first business they've ever started. They could be straight out of school and starting a business. I've worked with people who had 25, 30 years in the professional world, as and having a big title and lots of money, and then they turn around, they want to be a consultant or something, and they're like, but it's because and passionate, visionary creatives, because a lot of times the people who start a business like, I want to be an accountant, well, then that's a pretty much a straightforward business model, right? You're gonna be an accountant. You're gonna go out there and say, I do accounting. Blah, blah, blah. There's nothing sexy to it. There's nothing different to it. And you're competing. And what's different about your accounting? Well, I'm a block closer than that guy. Okay, great. Whatever. You have to carry that pile of paper a block less. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful for me. Great. Same price, less walking. But for the people who are visionaries, they are better at starting businesses than growing them naturally, and also they tend to have a vision that that's pulling them, but that's not completely clear. Clarity. So gaining that clarity of the vision, and then gaining the clarity of articulation, and then allowing, freeing them, because a lot of times there's guilt, because if they grow to a certain level and then they feel like there's all this responsibility on them, and freeing them from that feeling of responsibility and saying, you're not responsible to do everything. You're responsible to keep, your genius is the movement, to keep creating, and you'll create to this business as much as you can, and then to move on and create other things. And I've helped people create multiple businesses, because realizing that creating a second business fed energy back to their first business. But if you squeeze yourself down, if you're a creative, if you're a locomotive, and you try to keep yourself in one terminal and never go anywhere, just keep, chugging against the wall, it's like, okay, well, I gave it a lot of energy, but I didn't go anywhere. Whereas you realize if I went away, I'd actually bring more back than if I tried to do it all there. Those are the people that I tend to help the most, because they're the ones who need, all the rest of kind of business owners need more of a metrics, numbers driven, plodding along chronological kind of process. I work on an exponential level, and those are the kind of people that I help best.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. What do you? Such a big question. I don't know how we'd even begin to answer it, but you may be able to. When you speak to people and the people that you're working with, does it come down? Is mindset? Mindset might be too broad a phrase, but is mindset the biggest change that needs to happen for people? Is it purely down to belief more often than not? Especially with the type of people that you're working with, you say like they're doers. They take action. They know that they need to do the work. They're prepared to do the work. And even for people that are driven in that area, who are entrepreneurs and business owners and such, is the main thing that, because I analyze this myself all the time, and I'm always looking at myself all the time, thinking like, what is that thing that's holding me back? And so often it seems, in my mind, to come back to the mindset and the belief and the faith that this can actually happen. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. I know that's not really a very well-formed question, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are.
Okay, I think I'll be answering your question. I could go on for hours about it. Mindset is a word that doesn't mean what a lot of people think it means, because the brain is not the mind, but that's a whole other interview. But it really comes down to perception. Perception is reality. And so what holds us back is trying the same pattern over and over again. Bruce Lee said, be like water. If you look at water, watch water flowing downhill. Like, after a rain and just, a big stream, and streams just start themselves. And a stream gets to a big rock. And you notice that little stream doesn't try and go through the rock. It doesn't slam in, back up and slam into it and back up. It just piles up and up. And then eventually it just runs around it or runs over it. Or, you notice it starts to bubble up on the other side because it went under the dirt. So, we say, okay, what's holding me back is looking at our conditions from the same perspective that we did yesterday. And so this is what, shifting of your beingness also happens. When you change even slightly who you are being, automatically your perception of your circumstances changes. When your perception changes, so why, like, a lot of times if we do speak to somebody and they give us advice from the outside and say, well, I'm looking and I'm seeing that you have these other things over here you're not even using. You're like, holy crap, I never even thought of that. Well, yeah, because you're stuck in your perspective right now. But, if you can change yourself, your perspective, then all of a sudden the things that were holding you back, the walls you imagined were in front of you, because you were trying to go down a path that was blocked. There's always a path. It's just, if you keep looking at the path that's blocked and going, it's blocked, it's blocked, it's blocked, you're just going to keep repeating, blocked, blocked, blocked. So it's really about, okay, asking yourself a different question until it's like, okay, looking at the value of it, even the energy of the question. Why am I so bad at this? Well, that question sets you up for an answer to that question. You're going to get a list of reasons why you suck. What's holding me back? Well, you're going to get a list of things that are holding you back. What are some resources I'm not paying attention to right now? Ooh. What might be opportunities that are around me that I'm not noticing right now? Who are people that I could leverage or who would enjoy handling this aspect for either, percentage or pay or commission or something, some way to make it work, etc. What are ways that this can work? all of a sudden you shift the question, then the version of you changes. Because what was it? Einstein said you can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. It's the same thing as levels of beingness. As soon as you shift your level of consciousness, your level of beingness just a little bit, you ask a slightly different question, and all of a sudden, you're the water flowing around the rock.
Yeah. It immediately makes me think of the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. And yeah, it's great. I love that example. You mentioned levels of being a few times. There's you probably mentioned a few things a few times, but that's stuck out to me particularly. And I don't know if that's just where I am personally at the moment and things that I'm looking at and learning and reading. I'm reading a book, I'm looking over at my bookshelf, called Power versus Force at the moment. Is that one you're familiar with? You look at your bookshelf now.
The one that's sticking out on the front of
it could well be. I couldn't see it behind you, so you've got it on the. Yeah, all right. And that is literally like front and center on your bookshelf as well.
Front and center on the bookshelf. Yes.
Okay, I've got to ask about that. For people that don't know, what? So I've been reading that. Literally, it's the book that I'm reading at the moment. I'm reading that 3 or 4 chapters a day right now. For people that have never heard of the book, how? I don't even know where to start. How much of what the book is about, I guess, without giving away too much at this stage, but how much of what the book is about relates to what you teach, what you share, and even what we've talked about today in terms of the levels of consciousness and helping people move through those different levels?
It relates very closely. He and I have a similar, viewpoint on the world. His perspective, my perspective, is slightly different, but that's okay because everybody. There is no right way. There is just your way. That's why Bruce Lee using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. But yeah, David Hawkins' work greatly influenced me, and and Bruce Lee's work influenced me, because he said study from everybody, use what's useful, discard what's useless. So just like you, I'm constantly learning new things, studying new people, saying, okay, what from what I'm learning now. I mean, you can learn from watching a child skip stones on a stream just as much as you can learn from reading a tome like that book. But yes, I mean, that work lines up a lot with what I do. I guess, I have the psychic aspect of it too, which he didn't. And his is, talking on the kinesiology part of it, kinesiology testing, kinesiological testing, which is valid, but it's a pain in the ass to pull off. You gotta, it's like you really, you can almost not be involved. It's like you've got to set the questions, set the answers, and then like have people who really don't have any understanding of what's happening go do it. Because if you're involved in any way, shape, or form, you color it. But yes, it actually works. And it, but that's because your body, the body knows. That's why I'm not it's going to sound strange. I'm not a big fan of the brain. Is it required? Yes. I want to keep breathing and blinking, and digesting and everything. But actually, the enteric nervous system takes care of that on its own. But your body is really arguably more quote unquote intelligent than your brain is, because your brain is mostly subconscious. The subconscious is just a recording of everything you've been through and everything you've been conditioned into. Your conscious mind is 1% of the actual brain, which is why I believe that our minds, the creative parts of us, the parts that the genius comes from, exist outside of us. And there's tests that they've done that have actually verified that, quantum physics tests that they've done that have verified that. But again, another conversation.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, long story short, yes, his work and my work align a lot. And there's a lot to it as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. Thank you for that as well. I appreciate you taking a bit of a sideways step. Two further questions that I'd like to go into the kind of the quick fire out. We've already gone way over what I'd planned, so I hope that this is okay, because I'm loving it. I'm loving listening.
I'm just hoping anybody's still listening at this point.
Yeah, I think they definitely will be. So one thing I'd like to ask, and then we'll kind of move on. But we talked at the start about being, and as opposed to necessarily the doing, but the being and who you become and who you actually, like, being that person that can then do those things and have those particular things. Something practical for people listening right now. Is there a practical step or a practical action that somebody could take to get into that state, or to make the first moves towards understanding how they can be that person? And that might be that you might not be able to answer that right now. You might have maybe a resource that you point people to, or a video or something separate from here. But is there a particular first step that people could take, even listening to the show today, that they could go and implement?
Sure. So meditation, I mean, I use a number of different forms of meditation, or field work, or actual mind work to do work with my clients. But step one is to just get reacquainted with the experience of feeling without thought, without feeling from feeling feelings and feeling inside the body and outside the body, aside from the brain. And so breathing, and then breathing and kind of quieting. Don't even worry about quieting the mind, but just like starting to learn the difference between. Okay, I'll make this possible. Like closing the eyes, breathing, and then you could use just like a sound in the background or something to take your attention of the brain or whatever, and then just feel the heart. Just feel the heart. Now, now the first piece is to realize there's going to be thoughts, and then very gentle. The heart is like feeling is gentle. The heart is very brash. The brain is very brash, very loud. It's always trying to grab your attention. So learn how to put your awareness on your heart, and then awareness on how your body feels. Like just feeling your heart, just feeling your body, and being aware at the same time. Brain is blah 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 blah. It's showing you your third grade teacher. It's reminding you have to pick up milk. It's oh God, did I forget this? Like some movie you watched last night. Like anything. It's like a teenager that just wants your freaking attention and is not going to give up. And learning how to let that be, while also knowing that your attention is in your brain, but that your awareness is in your feelings, in the feeling. And then from there, I work with them on going, feeling into the field and everything. But just step one would be learning how to kind of just feel the physical heart, and then sort of the energy of the heart, and the feeling and the sensation of the body. That would be like step one.
That's great. And I think even as a first step for people listening, for those who, some people will meditate that are listening, some people will do other things as well. But that seems very almost non-committal. There's no kind of spiritual side to that, as you said, just by sitting there and listening and feeling as well. For people that are listening now and fascinated by this conversation, which I certainly am, and I do trust many will be, where is best for them to connect with you? Who ideally would you hope to connect with you, and who do you feel you can best support and serve at this stage? And what's the best way for people to actually connect with you right now, Erik?
Sure. So, again, the folks that I enjoy working with the most, tend to have the best results with, are, again, those kind of passionate, visionary, creative folks who have started building a business and have, kind of hit a wall or whatever, and they've tried all the, the usual suspects to grow it, and things just aren't moving forward and whatever, or they have questions or fears or whatever. Those folks are the ones that I tend to work best with, and they can, if they really are interested in trying out a bit of work with me, they can sign up for what I call a one question power session. And what that comes down to is that we are surrounded, like when you're trying to build your business and trying to do things, there's all the questions. And so it's A, prioritizing the questions, but then B, it's also, are the questions, as we showed earlier, are we asking the right questions? And we're finally coming down to one question asked the right way, that when you do that, all of a sudden, like a domino effect, boom, 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 because it's all, your success is waiting there for you. It's just waiting for you to click the right domino first, instead of, wandering around like a big elephant, just knocking down dominoes and going, okay, why isn't this thing is supposed to go, it's supposed to go up the staircase, down the staircase, and over that thing. And, and instead it's just a big mess. So helping you to figure out, which is the right domino to start with and how to ask the question to get it to click the right way. That's what the session is really about. And it's also, I do work with the higher self at that point in time. So it's a combination of what I call one-on-one +1 coaching. And they can go to erikluhrs.com, www.erikluhrs.com. Make sure to put the www in there. www.erikluhrs.com/power.
Great. Thank you for that. I checked out that. In fact, I've got that open on one of my tabs here as I was looking through everything prior to the call. So I'll put that link in the show notes for everybody as well to take a listen to. Erik Luhrs, starts again. erikluhrs.com/power. It's www.erikluhrs, erikluhrs.com/power. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. You mentioned about the one question. I've got one final question for you today, Erik. I've greatly appreciated your time. I'd love to do a round two at some point as well. The question that I would like to ask, I ask everybody that comes on the show, is the title of the podcast is Influence. What does the word influence mean to you?
Well, influence is basically, one person's ability to help, I don't want to say control. God, that's a loaded question. Well, basically, it's having an effect on another person in a direction. Now the question is, are we having an influence, or are we moving them in a direction that is positive for them or negative for them? And are we helping them to move in that direction because it's beneficial to them, or is it beneficial to us? But it is that ability, and it is, if we are able to influence, the more people that we are able to influence, the greater our power that we have. But with great power comes great responsibility. So we have those people in our life that we can naturally influence, like our family members or people we work with. The closer we get to people, the more easily we can influence them. But really, it's about your ability to help people or to hurt people, but to move them in a direction. And then it's probably, it's a test of you as well. Are you, now that you have this ability, are you using it for their betterment or yours?
Nice. The whole, thank you for that, Erik. For most people that are going to be consuming this show, they're going to be listening to the audio. Obviously, I've got the pleasure of us doing this on video, and we are going to release the video as well. But I can tell as we're talking, as you're answering, not that other guests that come onto the show don't do this as well, but it's very, very, very evident with you as you do it, which is that I can always see your brain working in it's like you're going into a deeper part of yourself to be able to pull those answers out and find the right words and things that make the most sense. So what I'm getting at is it's every answer that you've given today feels very considered, which I greatly appreciate, and I can see that just from on the screen as we're speaking. I want to say a huge thanks for your time again. I'm always inspired by the conversations that we have. I'd love to do, as I say, a part 2 at some stage as well. I'd like to just hand over the final thing to you. Are there any things that you'd like to share or say or leave people with today? Kind of any final thoughts or final words just before we finish?
I believe that within every human being is, I know within every human being is the most magnificent version of themselves and the most horrific version of themselves. And I would simply like, if we can, if you can know that magnificent version of you is within you, and bring that to the surface, that's an amazing thing. If you can do that, and if you can help 2 other people do that, the world will change radically, very quickly.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect place to leave it as well. Erik, thank you so much for your time. I do greatly appreciate it. I certainly don't take it for granted. On behalf of everybody listening to the show, thank you so much. Please do go ahead and check Erik out online. I will link to all of his various different socials, but the one I highly recommend you take a look at is that power session. It's www.erikluhrs.com/power, and Erik Luhrs is ERIKLUHRS. Erik, thank you so much for being with us. As I say, very much appreciated. For everybody that's been listening, thank you all for joining us. Erik, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.